We just got insights on some of the biggest news in terms of combat for Hytale. A YouTuber was able to see 4 minutes of brand new Hytale footage of the external playtest that they mentioned in a previous blog post. He was able to share all of this information and more, and I'm here to break it down all for you. But what am I exactly talking about? Let me give you some context. A YouTuber by the name of Quebec Corner got invited to HyCon, an annual event that Hytale employees come together to meet up and do a bunch of meetings and conferences. Well, one of these meetings or conferences was for Quebec Corner. He was invited to do a presentation to the entire team talking about the Hytale community as a little bit of a thank you and motivation for them to keep going. But what he didn't know is he was also in for a little bit of a surprise, because after the presentation, which I'll link down in the description if you want to see it, he got moved to a white room. And I know that sounds very creepy. I'd be scared too, but if it's the Hytale team, they can bring me in any room they want, because he got to see some Hytale footage as well as some concept art. There was a lot shared in his video, and I'm going to break this down into multiple sections. This video is purely going to be about the combat playtest that he saw, and there's a lot to go over. What he saw was the first external playtest for Hytale, something that they mentioned in their previous blog post. It was 4 minutes of cut up footage, so different perspectives. He got to hear the voice chats, he got to hear the in-game audio and everything together. For example, there were multiple players talking to each other saying, "Come with me 37," or "I'll protect you number 32." Given by those numbers, this wasn't that small of a playtest. There were definitely a lot of people at hand trying out Hytale for the first time. He mentioned that the gamers had different backgrounds, which makes sense. If you're testing a game like Hytale, it's a very diverse game, you want diverse backgrounds. So my assumption is that some of them came from an FPS background, some of them played Minecraft or farming simulators. You want as much diversity testing the game to see if a large player base will enjoy the game. Hytale is supposed to appeal to the masses, and if a certain group doesn't like it, let's take the farming simulator, maybe there's something really wrong with the farming aspect of the game, and they can work on that to bring in those people as well. The video started off with the players customizing themselves. It's the same character creator that we saw in the announcement trailer, which is cool to know that it's still somewhat accurate, but there were a lot more options, he says. I plan to do an analysis on this character creator now that we have the confirmation that this is in fact the same creator that is in modern Hytale. Remember, the trailer is 5 or 6 years ago, so things may have changed, but the character creator did not. There were in fact so many options that one of the players asked, "How long do we have?" And everyone else in the voice chat just started chuckling. That was also something they mentioned in the blog post when they talked about their first external playtest. Then the players got spawned in on a floating island with castle structures and ruins everywhere around it. The gameplay was very fast and had a lot of cuts and movement in them, so it was hard for Quebec Corner to really get a full grasp and be able to take in everything before it cut to the next shot. The first place they went was like a training exercise in a courtyard. Think of it like a training mode or like a tutorial to get used to the combat and the movement. There were training dummies to test the combat on, and they reacted with every hit. If you hit them, they shook around as if they were actually taking damage. I thought that was a really neat detail, and I think we can see this with future aspects in Hytale as well, where things are reactive to what we do. If we hit them, they shake and move. Then the PvP started, and it's where it really gets interesting. They were exploring the map, they were fighting with each other, and even creating their own teams to gang up on other people. Apparently, the controls became very easy for the players as they were already dashing and doing a lot of cool techniques minutes into the game, which is a very good sign for accessibility and makes me confident that any player can just jump into the game, considering all of these playtesters were able to. After they were done exploring the area and fighting each other, they got put into 1v1s, and then 2v2s, as well as a team deathmatch. There was even one arena where 2 players, instead of fighting, tried to get out of the arena, just communicating by nods, jumps, and gestures. It's funny to hear because players will always be players. They're gonna try to break the game as much as possible, and that was no exception in this playtest. We'll get to that later in the video because they ended up really breaking the game in a fun way. One thing to note about this playtest is that it's a work in progress still. This playtest is fairly old now, and so we can expect that a few things have been added. For example, some of the weapons didn't have textures. They were more sticks with colors on them. For example, one player had a yellow stick or the other one had a purple one. They obviously knew what it meant, but looking in, we didn't really know what weapons they were using. There was a large variety of weapons though that did have textures. There were bows, maces, kind of like we see in Minecraft 1.21. Potions were seen, such as a strength potion, as well as a speed potion. There was an interesting long-range crossbow turret-like weapon that people were using to really decimate the opponents. Interestingly enough, you were able to set up traps, it seems, and people were using these traps to set up other players and then jump from places and do trick shots. So they really got comfortable with all of the weapons and combining the traps, potions, all of it together to make some really cool highlights. One thing that Quiba Corner really wanted us to know is that the bows feel really satisfying. When you were drawing the bow, you could see the hand shake as if you were really at max pressure. It felt really satisfying, and that's super good to know because bows can feel either really clunky or really, really nice. And I'm glad to see that Hytale is going towards that really nice route. We've seen some early game footage from Hytale that looks, well, a little less satisfying than what Quiba Corner is making it out to be right now. This combat clip in particular is probably one of my least favorite Hytale clips. It just looks really, really clunky. A fan favorite weapon also got its mention in this combat playtest, and that is, can you guess it? It's the dagger pigeon. Well, the pigeon wasn't there, but the daggers were. Players were throwing the daggers and at rapid speeds too. It felt like they were able to just spam the button and throw those weapons. I feel like that's going to be a dark horse in terms of the PvP meta. If you can really throw those knives super fast, I don't know how you're going to be able to dodge that. Something I know a lot of people are looking forward to is the magic as well, and that was not left out in this combat playtest. Magic was used and it caught Quiba Corner off guard as a random fireball whizzed past the POV of the player that he was watching. It seemed like a lower level fire spell, so not the biggest fireball, but maybe more like a fire bolt, a fast to cast magic spell that does a little lower damage. The interesting thing about the fireball though is that he saw it in action against the environment. Someone threw a fireball on the ground and it ended up doing an area of effect attack against multiple players, meaning that the previous Ask Hytale where we learned more about magic is shaping up to have a lot more meaning, as sure, we can burn the grass with it, but that also means that we can burn the players standing in the grass, which can mean a lot of different outplay mechanics in terms of the PvP and even PvE against mobs. A fire spell wasn't the only thing he saw though, he also saw a healing spell. One of the players went up to another one and started casting a green aura spell, seemingly healing him. Going back to the traps I mentioned, he was specific about one of them, which was a root-like or spider web to slow the enemy players. This is something that we may be a little bit familiar with Minecraft PvP being the spider webs. I think we can translate a lot of the Minecraft PvP into Hytale, but turn them into spells. For example, that firebolt that went onto the floor and cast everyone on fire is similar to how people would use a lava bucket in Minecraft. The most important takeaway that Quiba Corner found from this PvP playtest is that the players were having fun. Everyone was laughing at all times, they were joking with each other, coming up with cool new strategies, and it felt like an environment that you just didn't want to leave. I'm sure a lot of the players after the playtest are yearning to really come back to Hytale and just play one more round, one more TDM. They're gonna have to wait like the rest of us for the full game to come out though. Like I said, some of the players tried to break the game as much as possible, and one player really found out how to do it. We've seen the air dashes before with the daggers and different jumping abilities, such as with the mace, jumping and slamming down, but these dashing abilities can evidently be spammed, and one player definitely took advantage of that. They were side dashing back and forth, and each dash takes you up a little bit of height. And so if you spam it back and forth one after another, you slowly get higher. And he started flying. To which the other players were saying, whoa, what are you doing? How are you doing this? You're flying. Players were creating classes on the spot as well. Some were leaning towards the more healer class, kind of like I told you with the spells. Some were playing a more tanky playstyle using shields, and others were playing ranged attacks using that turret crossbow thing. The important thing to note though is that the devs specifically told Quiba Corner there are no specific classes in Hytale. Every player before starting the round was able able to customize their own preset, which means they got to pick their own primary, pick their own secondary, their own trap and spell. Players kind of forged their own classes with this customization. It felt very freeing, and I'm excited for the fact that they gave the players full freedom, because that allows you to get super creative with things. It's not that they had to pick an archer class or they had to pick a brute to where the archer was maybe wearing lighter armor but used range to their advantage. They could pick a super tanky shield, use that turret, and maybe even a heal spell. What kind of class is that? Most importantly though, the game felt very competitive, and he says it reminisces of what an esport in Hytale could look like in the future. I can definitely see some tournaments being held and the highest ranked players all dueling it out against each other for a large cash prize. I'm curious what the meta for the weapons are going to be like. Is that side to side dashing still in the game, or do they patch it out after this playtest? Is the mace going to be the strongest weapon in the game? PvP in Hytale is something that I'm most interested in, and I think a lot of you guys are as well. That was only one small section of what Connor really got from the Hytale team while visiting Dublin at HyCon. This is only the first of 3 videos about this new information that he got leaked to by the devs. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the other 2. They're about the capital and the brand new Scarrick evolutions. It's something you really don't want to miss. If you enjoyed this video, you might like the following video that YouTube suggests. I'll see you guys in the next video.